I know we've got Nathan ready. I don't think Nathan really minds who they beat in the final. It's literally just cannon fodder for Mayo at some point or another. But have we spoken to Nathan since Saturday?
No.
Like, I wonder, is there added
on holidays? Nathan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads.
Is there added nerves because it's Tyrone?
I don't think so. I think Mayo have played everyone and anyone and not won an All-Ireland finals. So as we know, anything that could go wrong has gone wrong. I don't think there's added nerves because it's Tyrone. I don't think Mayo people, despite being favourites for this All-Ireland, are going to be taking anything for granted. We're not Kerry supporters. We're not being ahead of ourselves and assuming that we're going to go and not just win 1, 2, but maybe even 3 All-Ireland titles in a row, as I heard mentioned on OTB AM this morning.
By Tommy Rooney.
Yeah, I know. But
I just get tired of this. I just get tired of the show.
Building up to it. I enjoyed your trip down to Limerick and Cork. What I want to know is Owen Sheehan making the trip to Mayo next week?
Yes, please.
Great. Well, I'll be in touch with a few lads in Swinford who'd like to meet you, and maybe a few lads up in Belmullet as well who'd just love a little bit of alone time with Owen Sheehan.
Okay, nice one. What does that even mean?
Whoa! What weird perverted stuff are they going to get up to?
Let's just what was it you said about Mayo supporters when you made your trip to Castlebar?
The roughest type of effing animals.
What about my trip to Castlebar? It was nothing to do with Mayo supporters. I was reporting on a county board meeting.
No, when you were the last time, I think you were down for a Mayo Kerry match at McHale Park. You weren't impressed by the behaviour of the Mayo fans.
Well, maybe the Mayo fans weren't very nice.
I was very impressed.
That's impossible to believe.
I think he said stuff off air, Nathan, that we didn't actually report on air. And now you're like breaching the fundamental rules of broadcasting here.
Well, I think his general upset was that Mayo fans didn't sit back and just applaud the genius of the Kerry team and being allowed to be on the same pitch as this Kerry team, which I wouldn't have a major issue with.
I'm not really sure what he's actually talking about there, but it's clearly stuck in your memory.
Is this your first time on air since holidays?
Well, I only came back from holidays yesterday. So
okay. So technically it is the first time on air?
Yes.
Right. You two have a lot in common in that you're both broken wrecks of human beings here. Owen's got significant injuries to his person. You too have significant injuries. Are you all right, Nathan?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine.
Are you keeping the exclusive story of what happened to you for Golf Weekly? Yeah.
$3.99 a month. Golfweekly.com or offtheball.com/Golf Weekly will get you all that, Ger.
How's your concussion?
Coming your way tomorrow. I'm not concussed in any way. I'm perfectly fine.
Are you sure? How are the random headaches that are?
This is the biggest headache I've had since my incident, Ger.
Okay, well,
we'll dealing with you two.
We'll keep that for later.
Golf Weekly tomorrow. I'll tell the full story.
Okay.
What happened, Owen?
I fell off my bike. I was chatting to you in the office yesterday, Nathan. We told each other our full story.
I wasn't totally listening.
I fell off my bike.
Yeah, you did tell him, but he can't remember. That's the thing. He's got short-term memory loss.
Mm-hmm. Let's just we're not going to give anything away, but Golf Weekly is kind of is a good home for Nathan's story. It was a golf-related
contact sport.
Yeah, very much a contact sport.
Okay, OTB Sport in association with Cadbury FC and their club partnerships are returning for another series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in Premier League and Irish football history. With access to all areas, we chat to some of the legendary names from the big clubs and meet the crucial people behind the scenes who make a Premier League club what it is. First up, Champions League and Premier League winners Roberto Di Matteo and Karen Carney will join us for our Access All Areas Chelsea special along with coach Lisa Fallon, coming to OTB Sports social channel soon. This is in the can, Nathan. This is ready to be unleashed upon the world.
We're going to be playing out the first part with Roberto Di Matteo on tomorrow night's Off the Ball. I spoke to all three yesterday. Really enjoyable chat. Roberto Di Matteo, such an interesting career. Obviously excelled when it came to cup finals, scored in every cup final he played in for Chelsea. Hadn't realised that broke his leg when he was 29 and never played again.
All right.
And is really good on that. And the struggles that he had in the years afterwards and coming to terms with the fact that his career came to such a sudden and abrupt end, and that gap of 7-8 years before he sort of stumbled into management at MK Dons. So from being this brilliantly influential midfielder at Chelsea at a time of a lot of influential midfielders at the big clubs to never playing again. It's an interesting story. And obviously then we talk a lot about what happened in 2012. Like what an impact he made coming in for Andrea Villas-Boas, the comeback against Napoli. Like that semi-final, I watched back the semi-final against Barcelona, the second leg. They're 2-0 down at the new camp. So 2-1 down in aggregate, having won the first leg. 2-0 down. Gary Cahill has gone off injured. John Terry has been sent off. And still, they managed to progress. One of those sort of heroic European performances that he was responsible for. And I asked him about John Terry wearing the full kit as well.
Okay, excellent. And he's a big fan of Ireland. He's married to an Irish woman.
He is married to a second-generation Irish woman. And as is my way of turning all things back to Mayo, Karen Carney, her parents are from Mayo. Her dad is from Mayo. From Castlebar. They still have a house. They still have a house in Castlebar.
Very good. Okay, it's all come full circle here. Let's talk about Ireland against Portugal tonight. Yourself and Stuart Byrne are on commentary duty for it. We've got live commentary on Saturday. It's Stephen Doyle and Stewie Byrne for the game against Azerbaijan Saturday evening, and then next Tuesday evening, Ireland against Serbia. And again, it's going to be Stephen Doyle and Stewie Byrne on duty for that. I'm predicting a 4-1. We had 2-2-0s for Portugal. Both of these scorelines would be relatively acceptable, assuming that there is some kind of cohesion and visible game plan from the Republic of Ireland tonight.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, Portugal haven't really shown a huge amount over the past year in terms of going and demolishing teams. It's been a pretty slow start for their qualification campaign, where they find themselves behind against Luxembourg, struggle against Azerbaijan. There was obviously the controversy in the match against Serbia where Ronaldo storms off the pitch. I think both of those would be somewhat acceptable. It does feel like what's become a very typical international week, where there's a lot going on in the Premier League and this game sort of creeps up and everyone's obsessed with the transfer window. You just know that for the next 6-7 days, it's going to be an Ireland obsession. And there'll be times over the next 6-7 days where we'll be talking about the future of Irish football for the last 20 years, the next 20 years, what's going on at grassroots level, how come the players haven't come through. That those deep conversations always seem to happen when the slightest thing goes wrong. I think you're right. I think a cohesive performance is what Ireland need. Stephen Kenny said in the press conference that they weren't going to sit back. Now, you don't need to have a back-to-the-wall performance. You also don't need to have a kamikaze all-out attack performance. There is a big in-between where Ireland can perform very, very well. And I think that's where they need to sit with this. There were signs over not just the friendlies, but even the last couple of qualifiers, and I know the Luxembourg game was a disaster results-wise, that Ireland weren't quite as open and as loose at the back as they were right at the start. When you think back to the games this time last year when he was just starting out against Bulgaria, there seemed to be a huge chasm between the defence and the midfield. They have looked a little bit more solid. And tonight, they just need to hang on in there, and if they get a chance, which they haven't been doing in any sense, if they get a chance, just try and take it and maybe ask a few questions of Portugal and see, can they put some pressure on the manager, who doesn't seem as particularly well loved at Portugal right now, despite all the success he's brought them, because they're looking at the talent that they have and thinking, well, we shouldn't be playing this quite pedestrian, dull brand of football. We should actually be one of the most exciting teams in the world right now. And we're not. So why isn't that happening? So listen, if Ireland get a result away from home tonight against Portugal, it will be up there with our greatest ever results when you look at how strong Portugal are right now and where this Irish international side is in terms of the players and their level at club level.
Is this the best starting team that Stephen Kenny will have been able to pick?
No, I think even with the late withdrawals that night in Slovakia, that was probably as close as he got. It was a very strong Irish performance as well. I think Callum Robinson is still a huge loss. He was brilliant that night in Serbia. And I know when Stephen Kenny was in studio with us recently, he was saying that was maybe they made a bit of a mistake, and it'll be interesting how they learn from that, of not making enough changes between the matches when players haven't been playing at club level. Suddenly expect them to play 2-3 games in the space of a week is probably too much. Like, Callum Robinson was outstanding against Serbia, but because he hadn't been playing at club level, just faded completely in the game against Luxembourg. And I think he is a player who can unlock a lot of things for Ireland. So the fact that he's not there is a big blow. It's going to be interesting to see what he does up front. Like, the obvious Irish thing to do is you play James Collins because he's 30. So he's experienced and he'll lead the line and he'll be physical and he'll try and get at Ruben Diaz and frustrate him. Like, James Collins played that role against Luxembourg and didn't do anything. I'd love if he went, certainly with Aaron Connolly as maybe that lead man tonight, and maybe play Troy Parrott just off him. I think there's definitely a chance that he could put those two together and see what happens, or play Adam Ida as that number 9 and play Connolly just off him. But I would much prefer to see Ireland go with that than go with a James Collins as we need a bit of an outball.
Ruben Diaz has seen that. Oh, he's seen that a lot. Like, it's not, there's nothing that he's going to be like, oh, whew, never seen that before.
you can't get physical with Ruben Diaz. Like he's not going to care, and whoever plays alongside him isn't going to care. So try something a bit different. The issue is that neither of them been playing any club football. Adam Ida came off the bench for Norwich at the weekend. He's probably down to 4th choice at this stage. You would love if he maybe got that move so he could get a bit of first team football. But we're coming into this with a lot of questions about selection because of the 2 or 3 players that are missing. Like Jason Knight comes in, starts playing games, suddenly out all over again. Shane Duffy comes back into the reckoning. Enda Stevens is gone. So what do we do over on the left-hand side? Do you go with Ryan Manning, who's comfortable there at club level? I'd say it's more likely he goes with James McLean as that left wing back, presuming it's a back 3.
Yeah.
Or maybe you decide, well,
it's definitely a back
3 quality centre halves, and I can play Shane Duffy, Darragh O'Shea, and John Egan all together.
Yeah.
Move Seamus Coleman to right wing back and move Matt Doherty to left wing back. Like, all these things are still, it feels, possibilities. It doesn't make a massive difference in terms of the game plan. I still think you'd like to see somebody in the middle of midfield grab a hold of the ball. And that's that big bit in the middle between just ultra defensive and a bit reckless in attack of when Ireland get a chance to hold on to the ball. Like, is Josh Cullen in what will be his 10th cap tonight? Has he got that a bit of experience and composure now that when he does get it, actually he just keeps it simple. He just keeps it ticking over and gives Ireland a bit of relief at the back, because I think he's been disappointing in what we've seen so far. Very inexperienced, obviously, but just hasn't been that connecting player in the right positions to just do the simple thing, just do the right thing, just do what we thought James McCarthy would always do for Ireland. And who's in there alongside him? I presume Cullen will play. I presume Jason Malumbi will play as well. So who is that third figure in the middle of midfield with Alan Brown not available?
Harrahan.
Do you go with Jeff Hendrick?
No.
Or do you go with Conor Harrahan?
He's going with Harrahan. He likes Harrahan.
He likes Hendrick. I think he likes both of them. Both of them obviously haven't been playing.
Well, then Malumbi's not playing.
I would like to see Harrahan play on Saturday and on Tuesday when Ireland are at home. I think the best football he's played over the last couple of years was that spell at Swansea where he's playing as a number 8, given a huge amount of freedom to get forward and to support the attacking players. You're not really going to get that. Like, as much as I say it as a middle ground, like, Ireland aren't going to have the majority of possession here. So maybe Hendrick and that energy that I definitely feel he brings. I know most Irish supporters don't seem to see anything in Jeff Hendrick, but if you're not able to play players in all 3 games, I think Conor Harrahan can be far more effective in the games on Saturday and Tuesday. That's the difficulty for Stephen Kenny. You can't really write off tonight's game because, like, if this went
6-0,
I think you can have one humiliation. Like, I've said this since Luxembourg. I think you can have one humiliation. I don't know if you get away with a second, and that is the giant banana skin that is there over the next 3 games, over the rest of this campaign, if Stephen Kenny wants to stay on again.
Well, look, I mean, if we were to say we get beaten tonight and win the next 2 games, then I think you can definitely have another. There's the credit ebbs and flows, but if another humiliation happens immediately now, after having had some time with the team in the summer for the first time ever and having had most of the available squad, with the exception obviously of Robinson and maybe there's a few others who actually definitely he would have looked for off the bench, and certainly Enda Stevens, then I don't think he gets it. These next 3 games, if he gets through them and there's clear signs of progress, then essentially he's buying himself time. And at some point, sooner rather than later, the FAI need to decide, okay, we're doubling down and we're going to the next qualifying campaign with you. That's because otherwise it becomes such a big deal, and the planning needs to start now for the next campaign. The planning is starting now. If you look at the deals that they're announcing at the moment, they're longer term deals. The mood music around the FAI from a commercial perspective, the fans are going to be back in the stadium. Like, things are starting to pick up. You're seeing the new regime begin to have an impact off the field. Like, are they really going to sack a manager after essentially 1 campaign? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and the way Stephen Kenny's contract goes and the change to the calendar with the Nations League starts again in March, and Stephen Kenny's contract goes up to next summer. So you'll have the start of that as well, which will be, teams at Ireland's level, where maybe they can finally start to grind out some results in that competition. Over the next 3 games, I think 4 points is acceptable. I think, a win over Azerbaijan at home is a must. Serbia are very strong. I ideally you would beat them and somehow get yourself back into the running for qualification again. What we've seen so far, I think if Ireland got a draw and a creditable draw, people would take it. And tonight, as you said, that there's not a humiliation. But I think lurking in the background, those voices and those noises that have been there all the way through Stephen Kenny's campaign haven't gone away. I think Stephen Kenny is building towards something, and that I think every Ireland manager should get a European Championship campaign. Like, it's virtually impossible for an Ireland team to qualify, even a strong Ireland team to qualify for a World Cup. Yeah, we should be expected to qualify for a European Championship. And these players, the likes of a Josh Cullen, will have gone from 5 caps when they started to suddenly 20, 25 caps by the time that European Championship qualification campaign. It's a very different landscape for Stephen Kenny to deal with. So he deserves that time. But when you lose to Luxembourg, you're massively on the back foot. And I think if one of these 3 games, any of these 3 games, goes horribly, horribly wrong, the pressure is going to be massively, massively ratcheted up, rightly or wrongly. But that is the way that the public, that the Irish footballing public is going to respond to that.
Okay, we've got 2 seconds left to talk about the end of the transfer window, which obviously slammed shut last night. Are Manchester United the big winners of the transfer window? Did they have the best transfer window of all the teams, or is there actually still a glaring hole in the middle of midfield that they didn't address?
There's clearly still a glaring hole in the middle of midfield that they didn't address, and sort of seen the problems with that in their last 2 matches where they were very, very flat. They've had a brilliant transfer window. They could not have asked for any more. You've got a world-class centre-back, you've got one of the best young talents in the world, and one of the greatest players of all time. They have to be contending for a title. When we did our preview 3 weeks ago, we sort of knew it was maybe a bit too early, and I felt that Manchester City would win the league comfortably if they signed Harry Kane. They haven't signed any striker, and I think it brings them right back into the pack, which presents a big opportunity for Manchester United. Chelsea have had an outstanding transfer window in that they've done pretty much everything that they wanted to do. So getting Saul Niguez in as just another player, so N'Golo Kante is having a few niggly injuries, suddenly you're not quite as worried because you've got Kovacic, you've got Saul, you've got Jorginho, you've got other young players who can step in there as well. Yeah. So like Chelsea have the depth. And like Liverpool are the one that nothing has really changed for over the past 3-4 weeks. I think they've shown that they are getting back close to their very best in the first 3 games of the season. But the issue is still, they're the only club in that contending group that 1 or 2 injuries would completely derail their season. Pretty much every other side can deal with injuries because of the depth of squad. Liverpool just can't. If something was to happen.
You don't think Divock Origi is going to pass muster over like a 15-game stretch?
I just don't see it. There's very little that we've seen previously from Divock Origi to suggest that. Like, if Mo Salah were to pick up an injury, if Mo Salah started the season again as, if not the best player in the Premier League, as a top 3 players in the Premier League, and he rarely does get injured, but if he does, you're looking at a Virgil van Dijk type scenario again, where you're at the Liverpool side thinking, who is going to step in? And like, yes, we know the financial situation in football, but like Liverpool have left themselves in a position where they could be scrapping for Champions League football yet again next season.
It makes no sense.
Instead of spending the 50 million, like I was reading some articles last night of, Liverpool are going to go in big. They'll realise now they've got to go in big next summer. That's a year gone. All those players are a year older. You do it this summer. You don't hang around and wait. And I can't understand why they haven't backed the manager. Maybe behind the scenes, Jurgen Klopp is perfectly happy.
It feels a bit like they've blown the opportunity to become a super club in perpetuity. That actually a couple of big signings would have kept them automatically top 4, automatically Champions League quarterfinal, semi-final. But what they're doing is they're relying on the alchemy of the genius manager they have. And sure, we know as soon as he goes, there's no guarantee the next manager is going to be anywhere near as good.
It would be an absolute freak if the next manager was anywhere near as good as Jurgen Klopp. And like, some Liverpool supporters are sounding a bit like Arsenal supporters back when Arsene Wenger wasn't spending any money. I was making the point last time of, they didn't win the league because of getting 35, 40 million Mo Salah and making him better, as they did with Sadio Mane and so many other players. They did it because they signed arguably the 2 best players in the world in their position in Virgil van Dijk and Alisson for £70 million. And, well, they only had that money because of selling Philippe Coutinho. But there's nothing to be gained by saving money in football. Like, these are wealthy billionaires. And while Liverpool can go around and say, we're doing things the right way and everyone else is losing the run of themselves, they might be right in the grander scheme of things. But right now, this season, it is going to leave them short.
I mean, maybe they've got a master plan to get Kylian Mbappe there next year, and we're all being rope-a-doped by Mbappe's love affair with Real Madrid. So maybe the game is not finished yet from a Liverpool perspective, but certainly it looks like an opportunity missed. And I think we're sleeping a little bit on Chelsea's transfer windows over the last couple of windows since all of a sudden they were allowed to buy players again. Like, Havertz looks absolutely sensational. They have strength and depth everywhere, and... are we going with Better Call Saul? That's how it's a Better Call Saul? Because the YouTube, when I looked it up, was like Saul Niuef.
Yeah, the Chelsea transfer window, and like I think Owen mentioned at the start of the season, Kai Havertz is sort of everybody's sleeper pick to be player of the season. Like, the one for Chelsea in the opening weeks of the season has been Mason Mount. And the way that he has sort of stepped up with the quality of players around him, and he suddenly looks like the one who might be the most influential player. But listen, Romelu Lukaku is going to score a lot of goals. Watching him against Liverpool, there wasn't a huge amount of difference, it felt, between that performance against Liverpool and the type of performance we saw from Lukaku at Manchester United when they were playing against Liverpool. Now, maybe it's
I don't think
that's Virgil van Dijk for you, but...
Well, that might be enough for them to win a load of games that they drew last season against the mediocre sides, and they'll continue to get their draws against the best sides, and so that means that they'll still be right there last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, and the strength and depth might be more important at that point. So I think that might be all they need from Lukaku, is for him to be at the Manchester United level. They don't need him to be the best number 9 in the world, because that's a massive quantum leap forward from having Timo Werner on your side, who's missing every single opportunity that comes his way. In the league anyway. Nathan, good stuff. Enjoy the game tonight. Give us your prediction.
Yeah, it's an Ireland away game. I should say 1-1, shouldn't I?
That's what Dave said last night.
2-0 Portugal.
Right, it's a very common score. Everybody's going 2-0 Portugal. All right, Nathan, enjoy it. Thanks a million. Live tonight on the radio from 7 o'clock. Nathan Murphy and Stewie Byrne calling the Republic of Ireland against Portugal.